Hello, this is Siren ASMR. I'm Janine, and for today's video, we are going to be reading The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Nap. There's time to spare. This is one of those things I wasn't prepared for, the amount of unfulfilled time. The long parentheses of nothing, time as white sound. If only I could embroider, weave, knit, something to do with my hands. I want a cigarette. I remember walking in art galleries through the 19th century, the obsession they had with the harems. Dozens of paintings of harems, fat women lolling on divans, turbans on their heads or velvet caps, being fanned with peacock tails, a eunuch in the background standing guard, studies of sedentary flesh painted by men who never been there. These pictures were supposed to be erotic, and I thought they were at the time, but now I see what they were really all about. They were paintings about the suspended animation, about the waiting, about the objects not in use. They were paintings about boredom. But maybe boredom is erotic when women do it for men. I washed, brushed, fed like a prized pig. Sometime in the 80s, they invented pig balls for pigs who were being fattened in pens. Pig balls were large colored balls. The pigs rolled them around with their snouts. The pig marketers said this improved their muscle tone. The pigs were curious. They liked to have something to think about. I read about the introduction to psychology, that in the chapter on caged rats who gave themselves electric shocks just for something to do, and the one on pigeons trained to peck a button that made a grain of corn appear. 3 groups of them. The first one got 1 grain per peck, the second one 1 grain every other peck, the third one was random. When the men in charge of the grain cut off the grain, the first group gave up quite soon, the second group a little later, the third group never gave up. They'd peck themselves to death rather than quit. Who knew would work? I wish I had a pig ball. I lie down on the braided rug. You can always practice, said Aunt Lydia, several sessions a day. Fit it into your daily routine. Arms at the sides, knees bent, lift the pelvis, roll the backbone down. Tuck. Try again. Breathe into the count of 5. Hold. Expel. We do that in what used to be the domestic science room, cleared now of sewing machines and washer dryers. In unison, lying on the little Japanese mats, the tape playing Les Symphones. That's what I hear now. In my head, as I lift, tilt, breathe, behind my closed eyes, thin white dancers flit gracefully among the trees, their legs fluttering like the wings of held birds. In the afternoon, we lay down our beds for an hour in the gymnasium between 3 and 4. They said it was a period of rest and meditation. I thought they did it because they want some time off themselves from teaching us. I know the aunts not on duty went to the teacher's room for a cup of coffee, or whatever they called by that name. By now I think that the rest was also practice. They were giving us a chance to get used to blank time. A catnap, Aunt Lydia called it in her coy way. The strange thing is we needed the rest. Many of us went to sleep. We were tired there a lot of the time. We were on some kind of pill or drug, I think. They put it in the food to keep us calm. But maybe not. Maybe it was the place itself. After the first shock, after you'd come to terms, it was better to be lethargic. You could tell yourself you were just saving up your strength. I must have been there 3 weeks when Moira came. She was brought in to the gymnasium by 2 of the aunts. In the usual way, we were having our nap. She still had her other clothes on, jeans and a blue sweatshirt. Her hair was short. She defied fashion as usual, so I recognized her at once. She saw me too, but she turned away. She already knew what was safe. There was a bruise on her left cheek, turning purple. The aunts took her to a vacant bed where the red dress was already laid out. She undressed, began to dress again in silence, the aunts standing at the end of the bed, the rest of us watching from inside our slitted eyes. As she bent over, I could see the knobs on her spine. I couldn't talk to her for several days. We looked only small glances like sips. Friendships were suspicious. We knew it. We avoided each other during meal times, lined up in the cafeteria and in the halls between classes. But on the 4th day, she was beside me during the walk, 2 by 2, around the football field. We weren't given the white wings until we graduated. We had only the veils so we could talk, as long as we did it quietly and we didn't turn to look at one another. The aunts walked at the head of the line and at the end, so the only danger was from the others. Some were believers and might report us. This was a loony bin, Moira said. I'm glad to see you, I said. Where can we talk, said Moira. Washroom, I said. Watch the clock. End stall, 2:30. That was all we said. It makes me feel safe that Moira is here. We can go to the washroom if we put our hands up, though there's a limit to how many times per day. They mark it down on a chart. I watch the clock, electric and round in the front over the green blackboard, 2:30. Comes during testifying. Aunt Helena is here, as well as Aunt Lydia, because testifying is special. Aunt Helena is fat. She once headed a Weight Watchers franchise operation in Iowa. She's good at testifying. It's Janine, telling about how she was gang raped at 14 and had an abortion. She told the same story last week. She seemed almost proud of it. While she was telling, it may not even be true. At testifying, it's safer to make things up than to say you have something to reveal. But since it's Janine, it's probably more or less true. But whose fault was it? Aunt Helena said, holding up one plump finger. Her fault, her fault, her fault, we chant in unison. Who led them on? Aunt Helena beams, pleased with us. She did, she did, she did. Why did God allow such a terrible thing to happen? Teach her a lesson, teach her a lesson, teach her a lesson. Last week, Janine burst into tears. Aunt Helena made her kneel at the front of the classroom, hands behind her back where we could all see her face red and dripping nose, her hair dull blonde, her eyelashes so light they seemed not there. She lost eyelashes as if someone who's been in a fire. Burned eyes, she looked disgusting, weak, squirmy, blotched, pink like a newborn mouse. None of us wanted to look like that, ever. For a moment, even though we knew what was being done to her, we despised her. Cry baby, cry baby, cry baby. We meant it, in which we had part. I used to think well myself. I didn't then. That was last week. This week, Janine doesn't wait for us to jeer at her. It was my fault, she said. It was all my fault. I led them on. I deserved the pain. Very good, Janine, says Aunt Lydia. You are an example. I have to wait until this is over before I put up my hands. Sometimes if you ask at the wrong moment, they'll say no. If you really have to go, that can be crucial. Yesterday, Dolores wet the floor. 2 ants hauled her away, hand under each armpit. She wasn't there for the afternoon walk, but at night she was back in her usual bed. All night we could hear her moaning off and on. What did they do to her? We whispered from bed to bed. I don't know. Not knowing makes it worse. I raised my hand. Lydia nods. I stand up and walk out into the hall as inconspicuously as possible. Once outside the washroom, Elizabeth is standing guard. She nods. I signal that I can go in. The washroom is used for boys. The mirrors have been replaced here by 2 oblongs of dull gray metal, but the urinals are still there, one on the wall, white enameled with yellow stains. They look oddly like babies' coffins. I marvel again at the nakedness of men's lives, the showers right in the open, the body exposed for inspection and comparison. The public display of privates, what is it for? What purpose of reassurance does it serve? The flashing of a badge, look everyone, all is in order, I belong here. Why don't women have to prove to one another that they are women? Some form of unbuttoning, some split crotch routine, just as casual, a dog-like sniffing. The high school is old, the stalls are wooden, some type of chipboard. I go into the second one from the end, swing the door to, and of course there are no longer any locks. In the wood there is a small hole at the back next to the wall, about waist height. Souvenir of some previous vandalism or legacy of an ancient voyeur. Everyone in the center knows about this hole in the woodwork, everyone except the ants. I'm afraid I'm too late. I held up by Janine's testifying. Maybe Moira has already been here. Maybe she had to go back. They didn't give you much time. I looked carefully down, aslant under the stall wall, and there were 2 red shoes. But how can I tell who it was? I put my mouth to the wooden hole. Moira, I whisper, is that you, she says. Yes, I say. Relief goes through me. God, do I need a cigarette, said Moira. Me too, I say. I feel ridiculously happy. I sink down into my body as into a swamp. Fenland, where I would only know the footing. Treacherous ground, my own territory. I become the earth I set my ear against for rumors of the future. Each twinge, each murmur of slight pain ripples off slothed off matters, swellings and diminishings of tissues. The drooling of flesh, these are signs. These are the things I need to know about. Each month I watch for blood, fearful for when it comes means failure. I have failed once again to fulfill the expectations of others, which has come my way, which have become my own. I used to think my body as an instrument of pleasure, or a means of transportation, or an implement for the accomplishment of my will. I could use it to run, to push buttons of one sort or another, make things happen. There were limits, but my body, nevertheless, lithe, single, solid, with one me. Now the flesh arranges itself differently. I'm a cloud, congealed. Around a central object, the shape of a pear, which is hard and more real than I am, and glows red from within in its translucent wrappings. Inside it is a space huge as the sky and night and dark and curved like that. through black-red leather rather than black. Pinpoints of light swell, sparkle, burst, and shrivel within, countless as stars. Each month there is a moon, gigantic, round, heavy, an omen. It transits, pauses, continues on, and passes out of sight. I see despair coming towards me like famine. To feel that empty again and again, I listen to my heart, a wave upon wave, salty and red, continuing on and on, marking time. I'm in our first apartment, in the bedroom. I'm standing in front of the cupboard, which was folding doors made of wood. Around me, I know it's empty. All the furniture is gone. All the floors are bare. To carpets even, but despite the cupboard is full of clothes. I think they're my clothes, but they don't look like mine. I've never seen them before. Maybe they're clothes belonging to Luke's wife, whom I've also never seen. Only pictures and a voice on the phone. Late at night she was calling us, crying, accusing before the divorce. But no, they're my clothes all right. I need a dress. I need something to wear. I pull out dresses, black, blue, purple, jackets, skirts. None of them will do. None of them even fits. They're too big or too small. Luke is there behind me. I turn to see him. He won't look at me. He looks down at the floor, where the cat is rubbing itself against his legs, mewing and mewing plaintively. He wants food, but how can there be any food with the apartment so empty? Luke, I say. He doesn't answer. Maybe he doesn't hear me. It occurs to me that he may not even be alive. I'm running with her, holding her hands, pulling, dragging her through the bracken. She's only half awake because the pill I gave her so she wouldn't cry or say anything that would give us away. She doesn't know where she is. The ground is uneven, the rocks dead. Branches, the smell of damp earth, old leaves. She can't run fast enough, but myself, I could run faster. I'm a good runner. Now she's crying, frightened. I want to carry her, but she too would be too heavy. I have my hiking boots on, and I think when we reach the water, I'll have to kick them off. Will it be too cold? Will she be able to swim that far? What about the current? We weren't expecting this. Quiet, I say to her angrily. I think about her drowning, and this thought slows me. The shots came behind us, not loud, like not firecrackers, but sharp and crisp, like dry branches snapping. It sounds wrong. Nothing ever sounds the way you think it will, and I hear the voice. Down. Is it a real voice inside my head, or my own voice out loud? I pull her to the ground and roll on top of her to cover her, shield her. Quiet, I say. My face is wet, sweat or tears. I feel calm and floating, as if I'm no longer in my body. Close to my eyes, there's a leaf. Red, turned early, I can see every bright vein. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I ease off. I don't want to smother her. Instead, I curl myself around her, keeping my hands over her mouth. There's breathing, the knocking of my heart, the pounding the door of a house at night. Where you thought you would be safe. It's all right, I'm here, I say. I whisper, please be quiet. But how can she? She's too young. It's too late. We've come apart. My arms are held, and the edges go dark, and nothing is left but a little window. A very little window. Like the wrong end of a telescope, like the window on a Christmas card, an old one. Night and ice outside, and within the candle, shining tree, a family. I can hear bells even, sleigh bells. Sleigh bells from the radio. Old music. But through this window I can see. Small, but very clear, I can see her going away from me through the trees. which are already turning red and yellow, holding out her arms to me, being carried away. The bell wakes me. Then Cora, knocking at my door. I sit up on the rug, wipe my wet face with my sleeve. Of all the dreams, this is the worst. Next will be Chapter 6, Household. The Handmaid's Tale. Thank you for watching. See Siren ASMR. I'm Janine, and sweet dreams.